Welcome to part 2 of my eco-journaling project. In this video I'm demonstrating using junk items as stamps and stencils. As an example, I used a yogurt pot to create this page. By applying different pressure, it's possible to get more or less of the actual pattern on the page. So let's test it on one of the envelopes that I'm recycling. So I've opened this envelope up and I'm just going to load the yogurt pot up with some paint. So by gently pressing, I'm getting most of the outline of the yogurt pot, not the detail that's in the centre. A bit more paint on it, and this time I'll apply a bit more pressure by pressing down into the centre. Now the plastic of this is really quite flimsy, so you can't press it too hard, but you can see there getting a slightly different pattern each time. And of course, depending on the amount of paint, you'll get more or less of the pattern as well. So this is a piece of quite flimsy plastic. I think it contains some chocolate biscuits. And using a brush this time to apply the paint, and again just gently pressing down. So applying a bit of pressure to create more of the pattern. Again, just giving it a second go. This particular one has a kind of circle in the centre of it, which you can see the blob that's coming from that at times. But I do like the overall look of this, and I think this is one that I'll use quite often when I'm art journaling. And now I'm going to use one of my often used items, which is a cardboard tube. This one I've actually used quite a number of times before. It's amazing how well they hold up. So just applying paint around the rim and off I go stamping with it. It's quite a light colour this, so it's not showing up terribly well, but you know, it's good, it's working. I've noticed too that applying paint on these envelopes to the actual window, the paint actually sticks quite well. So this time I have a wine cork. You can use either end of the cork. Different corks can sometimes give a slightly different effect. I think it really very much depends on the texture of the particular cork. And also, depending on the amount of paint you apply, you'll get more or less of the pattern. So some of them coming out as a bit of a blob, others coming out just picking up a little bit of the texture from it. Again, this is one that I use quite often in my art journaling. This has been an inner top from something, I can't quite remember what it came from, but again this is one that I use quite often because it's a sort of smaller size circle. And you can see that it's possible to build up layers of patterns, and I think that gives quite a nice effect. This is a top from an asthma inhaler. It's got a nice bit can hold on to it. This isn't something I've used before. It was only recently I thought this might be quite good for a stamp. So we'll see how it works out. And I'm actually quite liking the way that this turns out. It could be used really as a border or anywhere at all on a page. I'm pleased with that. I'll use that quite often, I think. So again, another biscuit container. This one has a slightly different pattern than the one I used earlier. Again, just putting some paint on lightly with a paintbrush. I press it down. You can see it there, but this page is getting a bit busy, so I'm going to try it on a blank page here. So just applying a bit more paint. You could of course cover the whole thing, but I'm just using one end of it. Pushing it down, and I think that gives quite a nice, almost honeycombed effect. Really, again, quite pleased with that one. Again, quite a grungy look, but that's what I like, and I discovered I've got 2 of them, so that's going to keep me going for quite some time. Now, of course, the other thing we can't forget, and one that I've seen lots of people using, and that's bubble wrap. So let's get the bubble wrap out. Here we go. Now, sometimes I apply paint to this by using a brush, but I'm actually just dipping it directly into the paint this time. And there we go. I always think this is a good one for giving highlights if you're using black or white. Here I have an old ink pad. It's been well used. I'm just going to push the bubble wrap into it. You can see the colour coming off, and there we go. The ink gives probably a slightly clearer, better defined pattern. So bubble wrap I use all the time, and I have it in different sizes, which is really good. So let's now look at stamps. So the first one that I'm taking here is actually part of the packaging that some washi tapes came in. Unfortunately, I tore it off rather quickly rather than cutting it, so I've not left myself very much to hold on to. And in starting to do this, I also managed to drag it through the black paint. But here we go. So stippling through this, just trying to use some black paint to stipple through it to see what effect I'll get with it. And there we go. Unfortunately, I've smudged it a little bit because, as I say, I managed to drag it through the paint. But you can see the way in which this can be used on really any part of an art journal page. So I do quite like that. I've got some more like it, so next time I'll try and cut it a bit more carefully. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Here's another piece of packaging that I'm about to use. And again, I'm just going to stipple through this. I've got more to hold on to this time, so less paint on the fingers. So just stippling through it, but of course the other thing you can do is to actually use brush strokes to fill it in. That just gives a more solid effect to it. So I quite like that. You could put several of these together and create a journaling spot, or you know, you could just write with a white pen on that, for example, just a single word. So just really using up the excess paint here. Quite interesting using 2 or 3 different colours just to see the effect that that gives. And overall, you know, I really do quite like it. So that's just a quick run through some of the everyday junk items that can be used really with very little effort to create stamps and stencils. There's so many more I could have shown you today, but you know, I hope to demonstrate those when I'm doing some actual pages. So that's it for now. I hope you'll join me in part 3.